We are about a month away from Washington State's presidential primary that is coming up on March 12th. We already have the results from several primaries and caucuses, like those in Nevada and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Right now, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are leading in delegates distributed so far in their respective parties. We are joined now by the chair of the state Democratic Party, Shasti Conrad, and chair of the state Republican Party, Jim Walsh. Thank you both for being here and joining me here.
Great
Glad
to be here.
And looking ahead to the primaries and caucuses so far, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump have shown strong performances against the other candidates. It appears they're poised for a rematch. Are you surprised? We'll start with you, Jim.
Yeah, the momentum is definitely building. We've had record turnout at the precinct caucuses, which have taken place already. And on our side, the county conventions are just beginning. The first couple are happening this weekend. And then most happen over the next 6 or 8 weeks, usually on the weekends. And at those county conventions, the delegates to our state convention are elected, and we're getting real strong turnout. I mean, stronger than we've had in probably 20 or 30 years. So that's an indicator of the popular appeal of a lot of the policy points that we're making, both here at the Capitol and Olympia and statewide. Clearly, the 6 initiatives, which are wildly popular, are driving people into these caucuses and conventions. And that's a great thing.
And Shasti, are you surprised when it comes to a possible rematch again with Biden and Trump?
Well, I will say that 2024 feels like it's much of a 2020 redo with the Chiefs and the 49ers in the Super Bowl tomorrow, and looking like it is a likely Biden versus Trump matchup that we're headed for in November as well. And I am hoping for the same results that we had in 2020, which is another victory for President Biden.
And we know President Biden won the presidency last time when the two faced each other. Do you expect that to be the case again? Why or why not, Shasti?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely believe that we've earned a second term. The president has had incredible successes with jobs, wages are up, inflation is down. He has, supported labor unions, been out on the picket lines, protecting reproductive rights, standing up for women's rights. And I really think that he has done everything that we need to do to win a second term. And, I think that President Trump has shown us that he did not learn any lessons from 2020, and in fact has only moved even further right and has already clearly stated that he will be a dictator on day one. And it's not only just about winning this election, but it is making sure that we continue to uphold democracy and that we have more elections in the future, and that is going to require a Democratic win.
And Jim, talking about a strong footing for the Republican Party for President Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, do you believe how he is going to appeal to moderates and independents here in Washington state? Are you seeing that when it comes to the Republican Party?
Well, I mean, Madison, I think people would like to see a president who can complete a sentence. Joe Biden's had a terrible few days lately, and so bad, in fact, that Shasti told people she was quitting social media so she didn't have to see how bad the news was for Joe Biden. But Joe Biden's struggling. There's no doubt about it. And I think people want to know that the president is actually in charge. And of course, Donald Trump's not going to be a dictator. Shasti, that's a stale talking point. Come on. I mean, he's a polarizing figure in some ways. That's true. But I think people would like to see interest rates back where they were. They'd like to see inflation where they were a few years ago. They'd like to see the world seem more secure like it was when Trump was last president. The quality of life in Washington has not done well in the last few years. People are hurting. Gas and diesel prices are up. Rents are up. We got to do better by the people of Washington. And I think they've had enough of the current regime. I think they want the people to be in charge and not an elite that really isn't so elite.
I would love to talk about Washington state and what voters here in our state should be considering when they're making their selection for our presidential primary and also the election in the next several months. Shasti, we'll talk to you first about this. What are some key issues that voters should be paying attention to?
Well, I think, we live in such a beautiful state and such a beautiful place. We have had some of the best policy that has really helped people related to the environment, to climate. We've made this a sanctuary state for people who are seeking reproductive care. We have stood up for immigrants. Our Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, who's running for governor, was the one who stood up against the Muslim ban that President Trump put in when he was first in office. We have been defending for the best of our, for the best people across the country, but here in Washington, we are that blue wall that really is making sure that we are protecting our folks' rights. And so I think that it's really important that as we pay attention to what's happening nationally, we are doing everything we can to protect our folks here in Washington state. And I know that people are getting excited about what we have happening in this year when we have so many of our offices across the state that are open. It's ushering in a new generation of leadership, and that is something that the Democratic Party is in favor of. And I believe the Republicans want us to go backwards, and we are looking forwards.
And Jim, for you, what are some key issues that voters should be paying attention to when it comes to our presidential primary coming up very soon?
Oh, yeah, well, the presidential primary is going to be really the result, Madison, I think, of the interest that there is in the 6 initiatives to fix what's broken in Washington. Our main issue right now, and it's a crisis really, is crime. People are falling victim to property crime, to violent crime in this state, which traditionally has been very good on having low crime rates. And we're seeing them rise on all fronts in a terrible way, whether it's murders and homicides in downtown Seattle or car thefts and catalytic converter theft in the suburbs. We got to get some kind of control in the exploding crime in this state. And Initiative 2113, which restores reasonable police pursuits, is the largest single thing we can do to fight crime in Washington right now. And other than that, it's cost of living. The Republicans are going to help all Washington families, all Washington people live better and get some kind of control of this out of control tax and inflation that's just robbing from the middle class. We're going to restore a more disciplined approach to our budgets and our fiscal policy here in Washington. And that's a great thing for everybody, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in Washington state.
Thank you both so
Madison,
much.
if I could just jump in,
Yeah.
if I could just jump in there. I think Jim was talking about, sort of saying that we are the party of the elites. And I just think it's so interesting because his biggest donor is a billionaire, Brian Haywood, who is funding these initiatives. He's put $5 million towards these initiatives. And what I think that tells us is that the Republicans have given up on putting forth people who can actually win through a democratic process at the ballot box. And instead, they're putting forth these initiatives as a way to try to undo the progress that we have put forth by electing Democrats into office and moving forward on things like climate change, on accountability, and making sure that we are representing what people want. And so I just think that it's interesting to hear that those sort of accusations of elitism when you have Brian Haywood here basically funding these initiatives ultimately for his own tax cuts.
And Jim, would you like to respond?
Oh, Shasti, you know better than that. Brian Haywood made his money. Nick Hanauer, who bankrolls your politics, inherited his money. What's an elite, Shasti?
Thank you both so much. I appreciate your time. Washington's presidential primary for both parties is set for 1 week after Super Tuesday. You should receive your ballot in the mail by February 23rd. If you need to register to vote or update your registration, the deadline to do that online is March 4th. You can register to vote in person all the way up to the Election Day. Ballots will need to be postmarked or put in a drop box by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Also, a reminder, the special election is set for February 13th. More than 200 local measures will be decided across the state, including school bonds and levies and fire districts measures, among many others. For all the information and results, we will have it for you right here on King 5. Text the word election to the number on your screen, 206-448-4545. We'll send you a link.